Thank you, Margaret, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this misty morning. I'd like to jump right into what we're here to talk about, which is shared prosperity. And some might wonder, is that even possible today when half the jobs in the United States pay $18 an hour or less? When the average CEO makes 271 times what the average worker does. And in 1978, that figure was 30 times. Katie, the Good Jobs Institute has been making the case for some time that by investing in workers, companies become more profitable. Tell us about the Good Jobs strategy and some of the practices that make it work.
Sure. So the idea behind the Good Jobs strategy is that companies that combine investment in employees, and this is really critical, with a set of choices that both require and reward that investment, tend to outperform. So let me give one example, and I'm going to give an example from retail because, as we all know, jobs in retail tend to be bad jobs. So imagine a company, let me give you a typical retail example, right? So typically, you'll have a retail worker whose job it is to shelve merchandise. And that's it, that's their job. Now imagine a company that expands that job. And so now this worker not only shelves merchandise, they also solve customer problems. Maybe they actually help the store figure out what merchandise to carry. And
so you really empower them in the strategy.
Them.
Okay.
And what's critical is that both requires more investment because you need more training to do it, but then it rewards it because you see an increase in productivity. So that investment pays for itself and more.
And I understand also part of the strategy is adding more employees, which might seem counterintuitive. So you want to pay them more and hire more of them?
Yes, it's pretty shocking. As it turns out, labor is a big cost item for most companies, especially companies with large workforces, right? Like in retail. So it's very easy to think that by cutting your labor budget, you're actually saving money. What ends up happening is that when stores understaff, you have a whole number of operational problems. Like, have you guys ever been to a supermarket and you can't find the stuff you want and no one's there to help you, and then you finally find someone and no one...
Right.
That's
it's
how
like, is anybody working?
Right, that's how companies lose sales. So actually, when you put a little bit more labor on the floor, you actually, again, tend to do better operationally and financially.
Fascinating. Now, Dan and Mike, I'd like to... do you think that this kind of a model, the Good Jobs model, can work in your sectors? Because obviously Katie's talking retail, whereas your companies are really global business-to-business companies. So does it translate?
Absolutely. At SAP, we have 22,500 colleagues in North America and 95,000 across the globe. But this concept of, we believe so firmly that everyone is a talent at SAP. So in terms of the kinds of roles and in terms of the mentorship opportunities and onboarding opportunities, it is so important not only for our company's success and the success of our customers, but also the way we're going to innovate in the future. So, again, just maybe one concrete example. SAP, again, as a software company, compared to, say, other Bay Area companies, we were, our compensation model was predominantly focused on cash, right? And but we did not have enough ownership in the company, and so we launched an equity ownership program called SAP Own. Very simple, that every employee could actually own a stake in the company, and so if you own a part of that company, and we combine that with our diversity and inclusion and belonging efforts, then we are really more of a hotbed for innovation as well. So that's just a way to share prosperity, but share ownership and responsibility, risk and reward with our employees.
Mike, how is Siemens doing the same? I mean, are you sharing prosperity? Are you seeing a difference in the bottom line?
I think we are. We also have a sort of an ownership culture initiative underway to make sure that more and more employees worldwide actually own shares in the company, which we think does, from the shop floor all the way to the top. Ownership, we think, matters, changes people's behavior and perspective on the company. I think one of the perhaps unintended consequences of a difficult competitive market that we're in is that there are less people than we had a number of years ago. So whether you want to or not, you have to empower those people, because there's just less people to get the work done. And I think you find that people really rise to that occasion if you have the right leaders. If leaders can embrace sort of moving them further and further away from the command and control model to a model where people are self-directed and the boss doesn't have to have his hands on everything. I think we've seen some tremendous examples of people really rising to the occasion in a variety of different business situations and making a difference. And once people get a little bit of a taste of success, it's easy to keep it going, and it's amazing.
And it's helping the bottom line?
I think so. I mean, it's amazing what people can accomplish. Just going back to Katie's example, it's a delicate balance to strike between how many people you need and how many people you feel you can afford. So sometimes it's counterintuitive. Hiring more people actually brings more profit because you have to create a certain experience for your customers, regardless of whether you're in a B2C or a B2B environment.
Katie, could you give us a recent sort of a case study? I know that your organization has looked a lot at Costco, which most people are very familiar with, Trader Joe's. But what about something more recent we may not have heard of?
Yeah.
And how is it working for them?
So this is really hot off the presses. We're actually writing a case about this right now. Breaking news, as it were. So there is a pet store in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm not going to share names because we haven't written the case yet. But they're a very well-known and sort of beloved pet store. And they read the book, The Good Job Strategy, and decided to try it themselves. And so what they did is they combined investment employees, and actually one of the first things they did was an employee stock ownership plan. They very significantly raised wages. They added more labor hours. They did kind of a number of things there. And then they made a bunch of operational choices. So they standardized a bunch of the work that people did, but then they created space for empowerment. They made sure that all of the workers could solve any customer problem, and this is kind of picking up on what you said, they empowered people to identify process improvements and to figure out how the company could do things better. And that's one example of things they did. And what they've seen is that the productivity increase they saw in sales has more than paid for the wage investment.
Fascinating. Mike, I know something that Siemens does when it comes to investing in employees or future employees perhaps, is the German apprenticeship model. Talk to us about how that came about and where you're trying it in the U.S. and how that's working.
So we, the German model is very well established, and we're fortunate to be able to try to take pieces of that would work in the United States and bring them here. The whole model itself can't be exported completely because there are a variety of different things that happen that just would probably be too difficult to pull off in the U.S. With educational institutions and various levels of government and businesses all sort of working together in a long-term sort of planning scenario. But you can take some of those pieces and try to figure out at a local level how to make this work. So we believe that, and this is counterintuitive for most hiring managers in the United States. They want to be able to go out and find somebody today that can do the job tomorrow. So the idea of investing in somebody over a period of time is not the thing that they think is going to be the smartest move. So there's a lot of selling that we have to do internally to try to get people to understand this. But given the heritage of the company, it's a little bit of an easier lift for us. I'll use one example. We have a big facility in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we build and repair large gas and steam turbines for the energy industry. And we needed a lot of people to come work there. And we thought it would be a good idea to work with local community college, so we did that. So we have a person on our staff at the factory that is in charge of the apprentice program. She works closely with the business leaders, works closely with the community college. They work on curriculum. She'll do presentations to the parents at the local high school to convince them that it's a good idea to let their sons and daughters become welders and assemblers at this plant, that these are great jobs. We're going to give them good training, so they come, they work. For us, while they're going to school, they get an associate's degree. They get credentials that prove that they're capable of doing the job that they're training for, and they get paid while they're doing it, and then they have a job afterwards.
So that sounds like a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, it's been great for us, and we're starting to seed some programs in other parts of the country as well. So in Texas and Illinois and California and some other places, it's a bit of a grassroots effort at this point, but we're hoping it continues to catch on.
Fascinating. Dan, can you talk to us about some of the interesting and innovative things that SAP is doing? Because I know that really smart companies today have to think outside the box. I mean, besides using good job strategies and paying employees well and having good benefits, I mean, you've got to do more, don't you? I mean,
we do.
Tuition aid,
it has to be
parental
thoughtful.
leave, flexible schedules.
I think our talent strategy, it has to be one based on thought. It has to be intentional. We have this core belief inside SAP that talent is ubiquitous, but opportunity is not, actually. And so, for example, how do we as a company, we are very privileged that 2/3 of the world's GDP touches an SAP back office system. So, what is our obligation? A couple of examples. We have to help improve digital literacy, at the high school and college level. So, working with, a couple programs like our early college university program, where we actually are partnering with high schools to encourage young students, particularly underrepresented minority students, to pursue STEM courses. STEM will offer prolific opportunity in the future. And so that might be an example as well. The NFTE, which is very, very important in terms of teaching entrepreneurship. And our president, who I'm sitting in for today, DJ Peone, is a big proponent for the NFTE.
Do you want to explain that to our audience in case they don't know?
It is the, are you familiar with it, by the way? Okay. It is the network for teaching entrepreneurship, and companies like SAP are proud to sponsor through not only financial support, but also mentorship, and also, panel discussions, and we bring actually and work with students in terms of teaching and stressing the importance of STEM and entrepreneurship. We've worked with some local high schools in Philadelphia as well, which is exciting. And then, of course, Junior Achievement, and that has a very big brand, but 16-week program of bringing students of color in across every demographic, actually, to spend time at SAP. Planting seeds, I would say is step one. But our talent strategy, it doesn't just stop at the high school level. We have a University Alliance program that is so robust. Also, we're very proud to work with the colleges and universities here in Philadelphia. And to give you an idea, we hired 288 interns last year, and another 80 at the early talent. Where at the early talent is right out of college level. So at every level, across every demographic, it's so important that not only do we extend, but we measure ourselves on belonging and inclusion as well.
Katie, I'd like to ask you about some of the recent trends when it comes to employment and whether it's moving the good jobs goal forward. For instance, what Amazon has done, $15 an hour minimum wage across the board starting salary, or Microsoft saying, hey, anyone who contracts with us, who works for us, is going to have to offer to their employees at least 12 weeks of parental and family leave. So are these wins? I mean, they look like they're going in the right direction, right?
Yeah, I mean, I work for the Good Jobs Institute. I don't think we're ever going to say that a wage increase is not a win. We're obviously, it's especially with a company with the weight of Amazon doing that, that's a huge deal. I think what I would say is that while a wage increase is a very important step, it is not sufficient either for the employees or for the company. Okay. So from the employee perspective, obviously wages are important, but what's really important is take-home pay. And take-home pay depends on hours. In addition, schedule stability. In a lot of low-wage jobs, schedules are incredibly unstable, which makes it very hard to plan your life. Career paths. Can you move up? Can you, we're talking to two companies here who are investing in pipeline. Well, can that take you somewhere? So that's the employee perspective. From the company perspective, raising wages, economists will talk about efficiency wages, the idea that if you just pay more, people will work harder. That might be true, but you also have to design jobs to actually get more contribution from people. So for example, the example I gave in the beginning, cross-training people across a number of areas. So yes, it's a great step, but we need to do more for the employees, and then we need to design jobs that make sure that that wage investment actually pays off.
Before we go to questions, Mike and Dan, I'd like to go to both of you, since your companies are German, and when you look at the U.S. population, the estimate is that by the year 2040, we will be a majority, a nation of color. And so how are your companies adjusting to that? Make for me a little bit the business case for diversity.
I'll take that really fast. It's interesting, in the 20 years that I've been with SAP, 9 of my 10 bosses have been female. And my current boss and mentor is an African-American female executive. And so in the HR space at SAP, I think we've been very blessed because we are very diverse. Now and inclusive, and the challenge is how do we extend that across our different lines of businesses, right? And middle management as well, I think, is so important. But the work is always ongoing, and I think SAP realizes, much like Siemens as well, that our ability to innovate is really contingent on our ability to attract diverse talent, really. And so, the metrics are there that diverse management teams they simply outperform. And so, one example is our affinity groups, our employee network groups, whether it's Pride at SAP, which is for our LGBTQ community, whether it's our Black Employee Network, whether it's our Business Women's Network. They have an active voice, our leader, DJ Peony, my boss, we engage regularly with our employee network groups because they bring such amazing perspective. They are also amazing recruiters to bring more colleagues of color into SAP. But in terms of in terms of a diverse context and diverse perspective, that's going to be so important. So it is. It will be the only way that SAP can compete. It'll be the only way that I believe that this country will proceed forward as well. Is having that inclusion platform.
So we have over 350,000 employees in 190 different countries. So diversity for us is just who we are. You can't get on a call without having a very diverse group of people, just because of the nature of the way we're structured and the way we're organized geographically. However, having said all that, we are still very focused on people of color in the United States and women, just to make sure that we're bringing enough people into the organization to reflect, our customer base, the structure of the sort of demographic structure of the country, and I think that what we're trying to do, many of the things that Dan has mentioned, we try to bring our affinity groups to the events that we go to on campus. We run some, special discussions with people just to make sure that we're, bringing in the right people. We have mentorships for folks, so we try to do as much as we can. But it's a constant focus that needs attention from the top. And I think one of the things that we're hoping to be able to do with some of the grassroots movement and being part of the national conversation about STEM is making sure that more women and people of color pursue STEM roles, because that's what we need, and we just need the supply to go up. We've done some analysis that shows that when we have women and people of color in the pipeline at the beginning, there's no precipitous drop off as they go through the process of interviewing. We just don't have enough at the beginning. We just need to raise the number of people that have the qualifications that we need to be able to do that work, and so that's where we're really focused.
So I just want to note on that, and this is actually more from my time as, I interacted with a lot of companies as a management consultant, and I will say I think a lot of companies, especially ones based in the U.S., really, really struggle to do this well. I think that this has to be, as you're saying, an ongoing effort, but also an explicit value that the company has.
Right.
And I think that if the company doesn't come out and say, preferably publicly, we place a value on this, this is not going to happen automatically.
Let's go to the audience because we only have 2.5 minutes. I want to give you a chance to chime in. Raise your hand and introduce yourself. We have a lady right here in the middle, right here.
Okay, my name is Tolu Omodara. I'm a human resources consultant and also a student at Villanova University. I'd like to ask two questions of you, sir. The first one is on apprenticeship. A couple of weeks ago, I was at the first Pennsylvania Summit on Apprenticeship, and I was curious about one thing that has bothered me for a while. We talk a lot about apprenticeship, but we seem in the US to approach it more from the perspective of what I like to call the operational aspect of it. What's the program, who is going in, and so on and so forth. But we don't look at it from the policy aspect of it. And I was speaking specifically to how do you make apprenticeship more desirable, which is something you touched on a bit, like the brand of apprenticeship. How does it no longer become the option for those who appear not to be able to compete for college? And then again, there was something you said I was interested in. How do we look more at the Switzerland and the German models that integrate apprenticeship with conceptual framework so that it's no longer apprenticeship or college, but almost to an extent apprenticeship and college? I know you have spoken about Siemens, but I'd like if you can comment on it from a broader national perspective, because I think that the talent war is very close to us. A Brookings Institution program recently, I can't remember which one, but Joe Biden said there that any nation that can out-educate us will out-compete us. I never forgot that. Until we can educate holistically on both knowledge, which we get from traditional college education, and skills, which we need to get from apprenticeships, I don't think that we're going to be competitive for long. And I think apprenticeship would bridge that gap if it's done either the German way or the Swiss way. Very quickly, my second question is on...
We don't have time because he only has about 40 seconds to answer you. So thank you for your question. I'm sorry, the clock is
That's all right.
ticking.
No problem. I can answer that question in 30 seconds.
I couldn't, by the way.
Wish I could. I completely agree with everything that you've said. I think that this takes a giant, comprehensive effort. There's cultural mores that we need to overcome, that it's okay not to go to college. In fact, in some cases, people should not be going to college. If you've got an affinity for, mechanical kinds of things and you like working with your hands and you don't want to go sit in class and hear about, the Franco-Prussian War and you
go deeply into debt.
Yeah, and you go deeply into debt and you want to get a job that you can make great money at and, have a professional career. It starts with the parents, but the parents need to be educated. Maybe that's by the schools. I think the government over the last several years has been trying to do some things. I know there was some work that started back with the Obama administration and it's been carried forward now with the Department of Labor to try to make it easier to get apprentices certified and it make it a little bit simpler. I will say this, that one of the problems that needs to be overcome is that most companies have been able to get away with posting jobs and having a whole bunch of qualified people apply. And now that's gone. So now the companies themselves, people like myself, have to rethink everything we do. All the technology that we use, the people we've hired, the processes we've used, the behaviors that recruiters and hiring managers have engaged in all need to change. And I mean completely, from the ground up. Because you can't just post the jobs and hope that the right people apply anymore. You have to go find them. Well, that takes a different skill as a recruiter, a different technology that has to be used internally, a different way of thinking at the local level, which bluntly put, most companies don't yet have at the level that we need.
Well, thank you for your question, and please join me in thanking my fabulous panel, Dan, Kate, and Mark.